It's finally time. The time has come. How good are Alina&Karin Halloween version? Okay, so whatever is I'm gonna say in this video, it's gonna be mostly positive. But whatever I'm gonna say in this video, if you like these guys as characters, I mean, I probably should say this before every single video, but I used to say this when I started making these videos before every single video, like, hey, or at the end of every video, I would say, if you just like these characters, just roll for them. But I'm gonna say specifically for these guys, if you like these guys, roll for them, despite anything that I might say in this video, mostly because we've gotten to the point, we've gotten to this point like already 2 years ago, that if you just want a character for just the character themselves and not just for how good or bad they might be, most of how good they would be, I guess, you can still just roll for them as characters. It's gonna be fine. You're not gonna be missing out on too much. But now let's actually talk about them. How good are they in gameplay? So they are an Exile Gorilla Magier type that's already pretty darn good. That by itself is already chef's kiss, really good. They have a personal. This personal, when I first saw this, I was like, hold up. 3-turn Excel MP gain up? 3-turn Magier damage up? Not only is that pretty good, that's pretty darn good actually. That's better than most 4-star Memoria out there. I also thought for a second, hold up. Hold the fucking phone. I've seen the exact Memoria before. Yeah, we've seen this exact Memoria before from Nanoha Gacha like 3 years ago. Or 2 years ago, I don't know exactly when it was. First run, and it's exactly the same Memoria. It's got the exact same effects. The only difference being is there's one longer cooldown turn, and of course these stats on it are a tiny bit different, but who cares about the passive stats on active Memoria anyway. But yeah, the effects are the exact same, so this Memoria was already pretty darn good, and a lot of people that didn't get this Memoria back in the day were pretty darn sad, but you had to roll for Nanoha, and I don't want to say this, but Nanoha herself, gameplay-wise, is a kind of terrible character, so not that many people actually roll for this. But it was a pretty good Memoria, and now we actually have it, but it's their personal. So of course you have to roll for Alina&Karin if you want to use Memoria, but it's pretty darn good. It's pretty darn good, especially for an Exile Gorilla Magier character. It's fucking perfect for them. It's great. It's great. So we already have a pretty good personal. They have a really good stats because look at that attack stat. That's a pretty darn high attack stat. They might actually be up there with like the top 3 or something highest attack. I haven't checked, but I think they're up there with like the top highest attack in the game. But as you might expect, their HP and defense isn't the best. Let me put it this way. Now look at that connect, it has 40% damage increase, that's pretty darn good. 45% added killer. It always has a problem, of course. Now the connect itself does actually dazzle, so if you connect to someone and they do multiple attacks, their first attack, they're not going to get the bonus, but then on like the second or the third attack, if the enemy gets dazzled from this, they get the bonus damage for the 45% added killer. But if you, for example, connect and the only other guy only does 1 hit or 2 hits, then you're not getting that much out of it. The dazzle, I think, only lasts 1 turn 2 as well. And also, if you connect to someone and you want them to use their Magier or their Doppel, then yeah, you're going to be able to inflict dazzle on the enemy and get the bonus added killer damage from that. But I will also need to mention this. Right now, with the way that ailments are coded and the bonus damage from ailments is coded, like the bonus damage against targets inflicted with stealth ailments like the added killer bonus or the bonus from a level 2 or level 3 stealth ailment like dazzle where you do bonus damage to weak element. Both of those bonuses only afflict the center tile of whatever you're using it on. So if you have a boss that has multiple tiles that you can select and attack, only the very center tile will actually count as having this ailment on them. So all the other tiles, they take normal damage, but the center tile, they will take increased damage because of added killer. So if the enemy has like 7 or 8 tiles, one of them having an ailment and one of them taking bonus damage doesn't really mean anything. And you will see this if you like an AoE Magier on an enemy boss that has multiple tiles with this connect on them. You will see that only the center tile actually takes bonus damage, all the other tiles, they take normal damage. That sucks. However, anywhere outside of that, anywhere outside of like multi-target bosses, this is pretty darn good. So this connect is actually pretty darn good against anything that is like outside of these bosses if you actually use it correctly. You can't just fire and forget, you actually need to worry about like the first attack applying the ailment. Maybe you already want the first attack to have bonus damage, so you need to have an ailment before them so they get bonus damage on them, and you know, you need to think about this for a second. But for the most part, it's an okay connect. This would be a lot better connect if, you know, they would actually redesign the way ailments worked against multi-tile bosses, which is sadly a theme that we're gonna see for the rest of this entire unit as well. They would probably be a lot better if they ever decide to make ailments actually inflict to the entire boss and not just the center tile. They gotta do that at some point, because they keep making content, or like they made like a Kimochi just a few months ago that took bonus damage from ailments. Like it took bonus damage the more ailments it had on it, and no one was using ailments. People weren't using ailments against the boss that was supposed to take bonus damage from ailments, because it just didn't make sense against a multi-tile boss to use ailments, because of the way ailments are called. It made no sense. And FRS, they gotta realize that. They gotta know that the top 100 players against that Kimochi, and even further down, like the top 1,000, 10,000, none of them used ailments. They didn't give a shit, because it just didn't do more damage. It did less damage if you made a team around ailments compared to using a team that just did good damage, and that kind of sucked. So they must know there is a problem, and they must change it at some point. Anyway, moving on, the Magia, and this is a Magia character, so hopefully their Magia and Magia 2 or double is going to be actually good. I'll find out. So there's attribute strength damage to 5 random enemies, which is better than single target in most cases, but in a lot of cases is also worse than AoE. I did some maths, and the breakpoints is if the enemy only has 3 tiles, or there's only 3 targets, or like either it's 3 targets, 3 singular targets, or it's a boss that occupies 3 tiles, then 5 random hits is actually more damage in total than an AoE Magia. However, at 4 tiles or 4 targets, the AoE Magia already does more damage, but only slightly more damage. It's only a little bit more damage. But when you get a little bit high, like 5 targets already, like 5 enemy targets, then AoE Magia is already noticeably better, like significantly better, sadly. So let's say up to like 4 targets is probably the sweet spot. How many bosses are there that have like 4 tiles, or maybe even 3 tiles as around their boss? Like, not that many. There aren't that many bosses that only have like 3 or 4 tiles. Most bosses have somewhere between 5 and 6 tiles, maybe like 5 tiles. So I mean that there will be bosses. There will be plenty of bosses where they will only have 4 or 3 tiles, and you will make good use out of this. But there will also be plenty of bosses that are like 5 or more tiles, where you might be thinking to yourself, man, maybe this was AoE damage, it would have been better. That said, it's still probably gonna be better than single target in a lot of cases. So it's not the worst. We can definitely work with this. There are places and times where this is gonna be really, really good, and it's definitely a noticeable step above single target. That's really good. More importantly though, gives magic damage up to self, damage up to self, and flame attribute attack up to self. All decent numbers. However, because we live in 2021, where double takes 150 MP, and they're an Excel gorilla, and if you're using their personal, they get bonus Excel, and stuff like that, and they're a Magia type, so they get bonus MP from attacking, and all of that stuff, and some of the stuff in the Spirit Enhancement, you're probably going to use a double instead, or your Magia 2, instead of using a normal Magia. Now what does Magia 2 do? Because there's more damage, gives them Magia damage up to all. So the Magia damage up actually gets spread to all targets, 40%. It's pretty darn good. So this by itself, already a pretty darn good bonus, already pretty darn good. But on top of that, they give themselves 40% damage up, 30% flame attribute attack up. That's pretty darn good actually. It's somewhat selfish, but not completely selfish. You would still use them as the damage dealer on the team. The fact that it's attribute strengthened, of course, means that you kind of want to use this against what they're super powerful against, so it's going to be Forest Kimochi. At some point it's going to be a Forest Kimochi. And I guess if you compare the against specifically against Forest targets, because it's attribute strengthened, if you compare that to an AoE Magia that isn't attribute strengthened, that's like a normal attribute, it's like just a normal AoE Magia. The fact that it's attribute strength is going to actually increase the numbers that I said earlier. Like earlier I said, okay, against 4 targets or something, this is going to be worse. But if you factor in against specifically Forest targets that it's attribute strengthened, the number actually increases. And I think it's actually around maybe 5 targets or 5 hits, like 5 tiles, that this is still doing more damage compared to an AoE Magia that isn't attribute strengthened. But of course, if both are attribute strengthened, like this is attribute strengthened and then you have an attribute strengthened AoE Magia, then it's still kind of what I said earlier, where it's like, okay, at around 4 tiles is where it drops off. But these buffs are nothing to laugh at. even though they get buffed to do the damage, even though they are the damage dealer and you have other people buffing them, they're still giving Magic damage up to everyone and buffing themselves. So that's some pretty good stuff right here for a team setup. They work pretty well on a team. And that's pretty good. That's what we want for them. We want them to work on a team. Because of course in Kimochi you aren't alone. You have friends with you. And you buff them, you get buffed by them, you do a bunch of damage. Nice. They're pretty good in that. However, now that we've seen a whole bunch of stuff that is actually pretty darn good on them, we need to move on to stuff that might not actually be that amazing. So if you look at their Spirit Enhancement, it's kind of one of the worst Spirit Enhancements that we've seen on a premium character in a long time. It has one good note on it. This right here, the Fast Mana Up, is actually pretty darn good. Okay? This Epic Age Star, that's pretty darn good. It's not amazing, but it's pretty darn good, okay? Then their active gives themselves 20% attack up, Fame Attribute attack up even, which is better than normal attack up for 3 turns, which is also pretty darn good. If you get 2 Maga out of this, also I should say that if you use their personal, you probably want to use this in such a way that you can get 2 doppels out while this is active. Okay, so you use it when you use your first doppel, then you use the Excel up to hopefully get your way to the second Magia 2 or doppel rather, and then you use the second one. And it's the same with the active. Use this when you use your first doppel, and then make sure you get another doppel out before this buff ends. And for the first doppel, you get the dazzle on top of that, so you deal a little bit of bonus damage to that center tile. Great. Now, apart from those 2 things though, like the active and this node, the entire rest is kind of completely pointless. You have Anti-Charm, which basically never matters. The only other good thing is like the SMP gain up, but come on, everyone gets like a little bit of MP up, so them getting some MP up is not really special or a bonus. It's just nice that they get it at all. The Dazzle on an attack, like, it's like almost never gonna actually do anything. Mostly because they're a Magia character, and you're probably not gonna... this lasts for 1 turn, so you need to attack, have it hit the 20%, then have a Magia later that turn that actually hits the tiles that were hit with this Dazzle. It's just very low chance of this actually giving you any amount of damage up. So it's not that good. And the Magia Seal is nice, but how many things in this game even do Magia Seal? Evade is fine, I guess, but if you're playing these on Kimochi, which you probably would, you definitely play these on Forest Kimochi. You're not gonna die ever anyway, so you don't need defensive. Speaking about you're not gonna die ever anyway, bonus defenses, cool. Against the element they're good against anyway, because they're fire type. There's so much wasted shit in here that they absolutely don't need at all. And you can say, oh, but they have this bonus doppel damage up stuff in here, which, yeah, is fine, but they traded it for a normal Maga damage up node. Other characters here have like a 10% Maga damage up instead. So even though this is better, it's not better by a lot. It's not better by a lot. So overall, I mean, the SE is not in itself terrible. It's just compared to what we've seen the last few months, it's some of the worst stuff we've seen with so many wasted nodes. Most whales that I know don't even get half of these nodes. They get only like a few of these nodes and then just spam the rest into stats. And that's what some whales do. I would not have you guys do that. I mean, I don't think that's good for most normal players to do that. But that just shows you how terrible this SE is, that most whales don't even give a shit about almost everything in here. So that sucks. Overall though, aside from some key weaknesses, they're pretty darn good. They're absolutely fantastic against smiting everything that smells of forest. If anything has this little forest symbol on them, you slam them in there and they absolutely destroy them. They're going to be pretty darn good against Kimochi. Are they going to be the absolute top against forest Kimochi? Hard to say. It kind of depends on how many tiles the Kimochi is going to have. Like I said, if the enemy Kimochi is going to have like 4 tiles, then they're going to be all right. If they have 3 tiles, they're going to be really, really good. Probably, yeah, if the enemy Forest Kimochi is going to have 3 tiles, this is the number 1 choice. There's nothing going to be better than this. If they had 4 tiles, it's going to be a toss-up, depending on how much damage you can do with each individual hit. But if it has 5 tiles or more, you're probably not going to play these. However, they have a really good shot of being all the way up there with the Forest Kimochi, and even outside of Forest Kimochi. They are just very solid. They do a crap ton of damage. They have a pretty good Magia too that they can use together with their active and their personal to keep cycling through multiple Magias in a row. And the second Magia, if the first Magia too doesn't destroy the enemies with these buffs, the second definitely will. So yeah, they're pretty darn good. They're pretty darn good. They might have some caveats with them. They might have some stuff to watch out for. They might have some asterisks attached to them. But aside from those asterisks, they're pretty darn fucking good. And they're Alicari, so what more could you want? Moving on to the rest of what's in their Fate Weave, we have these Memoria. Now, the Memoria are not the greatest. I'm going to just start with the 3-star Memoria because this one's... It's not that bad, I guess. Like, if you have absolutely no Excel Memoria and you desperately need Excel Memoria to really get characters all the way to double, like you're specifically struggling with getting characters to double because you don't have that many good Excel Memoria, this is actually quite alright. This would actually be a pretty good Memoria in those cases. Moving on, though, we have this. I'm surprised this is not an Excel or MP focused Memoria, because you would expect a character like this actually be focused on Excel and MP. I mean, their personal specifically is focused on Excel, MP, and Magi on top of that. This one gives none of that. It just gives attack up and damage. However, it's pretty darn good at that. Now, the anti-curse doesn't actually detract much from the rest of this. It just gives attack up 3 and damage increase 3, which is 15%. Overall, it's like 30% total damage budget, which is pretty darn good. Like, overall, in the effect of like the actual bonus damage you get from the Memoria in total. Also keep in mind this thing has 2,335 flat attack on it, which is actually absurd. It might actually be the highest. I haven't actually checked, but this might actually be the highest flat attack Memoria in the entire game with this much, because that's actually an insane number. It's actually pretty darn good. However, it's not really broken. We've seen a bunch of Memorias recently that were actually kind of broken and kind of overpowered. This one is, it's still balanced. It's on the top level of balance. It's like almost overpowered, but it's still reasonable. It's still reasonable Memoria, but it's also pretty darn good. It's like scratching that OP ceiling a little bit. So yeah, it's a pretty good Memoria. I got 4 of these. Oh yeah, I did roll for them. I made a video where I rolled for them. I'm not gonna tell you exactly how many rolls I needed, but I did get them at 4 slot. I only got 4 of these and not 5, which you need for MLB, and I'm very sad. But yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and I'll see you guys next time.